during a flight. A black pastor was asked to remove his cross. Rather than reacting with anger, he rose and shared a message that captivated everyone. It was a pleasant Friday morning in late April when Pastor Elijah Rowe entered Raleigh-Durham International Airport through the sliding glass doors, pulling a small black carry-on behind him. He wasn't hurried, never was. At 58 years old, Elijah possessed the composed demeanor of someone who understood that serenity wasn't achieved through haste. His flight to Albuquerque was planned with a connection in Kansas City, and Flight 287 would transport him through the initial segment. He was wearing a light cream linen shirt, dark slacks, and worn brown shoes that had been present at numerous potluck dinners and hospital rooms beyond measure. However, what distinguished him wasn't his attire. It was the small wooden cross resting softly against his chest. It wasn't ostentatious or large. No gold, no diamonds, simply a piece of carved wood. The edges softened by years of use. His grandmother had given it to him when he was 18, shortly before her passing. "Wear it when the world forgets who you are," she told him. He hadn't taken off since. At gate C-21, Elijah located a quiet corner seat and retrieved a notepad. He didn't prepare his sermons on a laptop. He favored paper, appreciating the sound of pen against page. This week's message concerned forgiveness, once more. He quietly chuckled to himself. "It feels as though I'm meant to continue sharing what I'm still discovering," he murmured, taking a sip of lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. The boarding call came promptly. He rose, offered a pleasant good morning to the gate agent, and proceeded down the jet bridge. He gave a brief acknowledgement to the flight attendant stationed by the door. A tall woman with a formal demeanor and a precise tone. "Seat 22, Elijah spoke quietly to himself as he walked down the aisle. A young man was already settled into 22B, wearing headphones and a hoodie. Elijah offered a polite smile and took a seat by the window. The boy didn't acknowledge him. That was acceptable. Elijah didn't require conversation to feel at ease. He positioned the cross against his shirt and continued writing in his notebook. After 15 minutes, the cabin door closed. The aircraft began to pull away from the gate. The standard announcements were made, followed by the familiar, somewhat jarring sound as the plane accelerated down the runway. Elijah murmured a brief prayer as the plane ascended into the sky. He was halfway through his outline on Luke 6 when a voice broke his concentration. "Sir," a woman's voice said from the aisle. "Sir, excuse me." Elijah looked up to see the same tall flight attendant from earlier, standing beside him. "Yes, ma'am?" he asked, his eyes gentle. She did not smile. "Could you please tuck your necklace into your shirt?" Elijah blinked. "My cross." She nodded. "We've received some complaints." He looked around, surprised. "From whom?" She replied quickly, "I can't disclose that. We simply request that passengers be considerate of items that may cause discomfort to others." He studied her face for a moment. There was no warmth in it, no opportunity for discussion. "I'm sorry," Elijah said slowly, "but this necklace isn't a display. It's my faith. It was my grandmother's." "Sir, I'm not attempting to argue with you," she said, her voice tightening. "I'm requesting that you please comply with a straightforward request so we can avoid any additional issues." "Is this an airline policy?" Her lips formed a thin line. "I need your cooperation," she stated. The young man in 22B adjusted his hoodie and looked at Elijah, then averted his gaze. Elijah kept his hands still on his notebook. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't moved. "I'm sorry," he repeated, his tone even quieter this time. "But I won't be hiding it." The flight attendant released a breath through her nose, appearing visibly annoyed. "I'll be back," she said, and then turned and left. Elijah leaned back in his seat and looked out the window. Below them, the clouds spread out, a vast expanse of brilliant white. He touched the cross carefully, his thumb tracing the worn rim. This feeling wasn't unfamiliar, not precisely. Yet it felt altered, as if something had changed, though he couldn't yet identify what. The flight continued, and so did their discussion. The drink cart was 2 rows behind when she returned, without a smile, without warmth. She maintained the same rigid posture and that precise, formal tone, making each word feel like a protocol rather than an exchange. "Sir," she repeated, standing before Elijah's row, her arms now crossed. "I must ask you once more to secure the necklace." A woman, 2 rows above, expressed that she finds it objectionable. Elijah didn't reply immediately. He observed her intently. Her name tag indicated C. Densmore. Her uniform was immaculate, with not a single thread amiss. She repeatedly looked at the other passengers, seemingly searching for support or an observer. He focused his gaze forward. In row 20, a woman wearing a blue blazer and large sunglasses remained fixedly ahead. She didn't look back, didn't move restlessly, simply waited. "I understand what you're saying," Elijah responded steadily. "But I am innocent. I haven't spoken to anyone. I'm simply sitting here quietly. Why is this necklace causing a problem?" Claire Densmore's jaw tightened. "This isn't concerning your silence. It's important to be thoughtful. If someone finds something you're wearing upsetting, it's fair to ask you to modify it," Elijah stated calmly. "If someone is offended by my faith, I don't believe that gives them the right to suppress it." At that point, her tone changed. A hint of her composure faded. "You're being uncooperative," she said, her voice rising. "I am asking you respectfully, but you are being confrontational," and several heads turned. A woman situated 2 rows back extended into the aisle, observing. A man seated across from Elijah shifted his position to gain a clearer view. Elijah's pulse quickened, though his expression remained unchanged. He glanced toward the young man in 22B. The kid had retrieved his phone, subtly, not overtly. Screen angled upwards, thumb poised above the record button. "I'm not trying to provoke anyone," Elijah said, speaking deliberately. "But I won't conceal my cross. I won't take it away to accommodate another person's ease. I apologize." Claire expressed her disapproval. "Then we may have to escalate this," she stated firmly. "You're refusing to follow a directive from a flight crew member. That's a federal offense," someone exclaimed. "Are you serious?" Another voice inquired from a few rows back. A middle-aged man with a salt and pepper beard leaned into the aisle. "He's literally just sitting there," he observed. Claire disregarded him. "I'm going to inform the captain," she declared, maintaining eye contact with Elijah. "We'll handle this when we land." "Of course," Elijah responded. She turned and walked away again, this time with a quicker pace, speaking quietly to another flight attendant as she moved past the drink cart. The ensuing silence felt heavy. Elijah remained still in his seat, his pen still held between his fingers. The pages of his sermon notes shifted gently in the airflow from the overhead vent. Then a quiet voice emerged. "Sir," the boy beside him whispered, almost lost in the plane's hum. "I'm recording, just so you know, in case they attempt anything." Elijah slowly turned his head and offered the boy a thankful nod. "Thank you," he said softly. "I saw everything," the boy added. "She's way out of line," Elijah smiled slightly. "Sometimes it's not about the cross. It's about the person wearing it." The boy remained silent, but glanced down at his phone, which was still recording. 3 rows back, an older black woman whispered something to the person beside her. Her gaze met Elijah's for a brief moment. She offered him a subtle nod, as if acknowledging his presence and understanding his situation. That gesture carried weight. The intercom buzzed, and another attendant, not Claire, delivered a brief announcement regarding anticipated light turbulence. Standard procedure. However, the atmosphere on the plane had changed noticeably. Passengers were no longer solely focused on sleeping or entertainment. They were alert and observant. It wasn't the sort of attention Elijah desired, but his perspective had become secondary. Before the plane could land, an unexpected event occurred, one that even Elijah hadn't anticipated. By the time the plane stabilized after the turbulence warning, Claire Densmore returned to the aisle, but she was accompanied by another flight attendant. He was a younger man with dark hair and visibly nervous eyes. His name tag identified him as Jonas Worth, and unlike Claire, he lacked confidence in his demeanor. His steps were hesitant, appearing almost apologetic. "Mr. Rowe," Claire began, ensuring her voice carried to a significant portion of the cabin. "I've spoken with the captain. If you persist in disregarding crew instructions, we might need to take additional measures upon arrival." Elijah remained unperturbed. I would still appreciate knowing which policy I'm in violation of. You're becoming argumentative once more, Claire retorted. Jonas moved closer, observing the interaction. Perhaps we could simply... Claire interrupted him. Jonas, I'm managing this. And then it reappeared, that palpable tension, that familiar tone. Elijah stayed seated, outwardly calm, though his heart raced. Behind them, row 19 began to move. I don't see why he should be made to conceal his cross, a woman with curly red hair and a noticeable Wisconsin accent stated. I wear a Star of David necklace on every flight. I've never been addressed about it. Claire turned quickly. Ma'am, I am requesting you refrain from intervening. The woman responded, I'm not interfering. I'm simply observing that this feels like he's being unfairly targeted. At that moment, something changed noticeably. The atmosphere shifted. Passengers were no longer simply observing, but responding. A gentleman in seat 18D craned his neck. Is this truly how this airline handles situations? He inquired. I'm recording as well, and I understand how swiftly videos spread online. Claire appeared taken aback. She started to speak, then hesitated and closed her mouth. Elijah, Jonas said quietly, intervening and lowering his tone. Sir, I apologize truly. You've been entirely respectful. I believe we should reduce the tension. Let's allow this to pass. Claire's cheeks reddened. She looked at Jonas as if he had committed a betrayal. Then, with a visible effort to control herself, she hissed. He's disregarding a direct order. To do what? Elijah asked, maintaining his composure. To conceal a portion of myself that I've carried for 40 years? That doesn't seem correct to me, ma'am. Claire's jaw tightened again. I am finished. She turned and walked forcefully toward the front of the plane, her shoulders stiff with anger. Jonas remained behind, feeling unsure. I apologize for all of this, he said softly to Elijah. I believe she misinterpreted the circumstances, she responded. I think she understood perfectly, Elijah said calmly. She simply didn't approve of what she observed. Jonas lowered his gaze, then looked away. The cabin stabilized, but a feeling of unease lingered. Passengers murmured along the aisle, with some visibly shaking their heads. A cough broke the silence. The boy in 22B continued filming. Then Elijah took an unexpected action. He rose to his feet. Without raising his voice or gesturing, he stood in the confined area near his seat and angled himself so those in the surrounding rows could hear. I don't often speak in public spaces such as this, he began, his voice steady but quiet. But I believe it's important to say something. One by one, people turned to look at him. I'm a pastor, he continued. I serve a small church in Durham. This cross, he raised it carefully between his fingers, was a gift from my grandmother. She experienced events that many of us only read about. She advised me to wear this when the world attempted to define me. A brief silence followed. I have not removed it since her funeral. My reason isn't that I believe it improves me, but that it serves as a reminder to remain compassionate. Even when I am not shown kindness, a person in 24C covered their mouth. Another individual in 20F audibly sniffled. I understand not everyone shares my beliefs. I acknowledge and respect that, but I am certain I have acted appropriately. I remained still, adhered to every guideline, and attempted to be courteous, even when I felt diminished. He addressed Jonas directly. I do not require being asked to leave this flight. I pose no danger. I am merely a man traveling home to deliver a sermon on forgiveness on Sunday. The atmosphere on the plane was subdued, yet sometimes silence conveys more than words ever could, and the quietness wasn't going to last much longer. Claire had not reappeared since she departed. The whereabouts of Eleanor remained uncertain, whether she was in the galley, visibly upset, or once again speaking with the captain. It was unclear. However, the atmosphere in the cabin had shifted. It wasn't just one person standing. Instead, a sense of reality had permeated the space, manifesting in every hushed exchange and fleeting look shared among those seated within 30 rows. Elijah quietly resumed his seat, as if finishing a chapter in a novel. He sought no accolades and craved no validation. He simply released a breath. The young man next to him ceased recording, though he kept his phone in hand. "You sure you're pastor?" he inquired softly, a slight smirk playing on his lips. Elijah laughed. "Some Sundays I question it myself," he admitted. The young man chuckled and glanced at his phone screen. "That's already being shared. People need to hear things like that." A few minutes elapsed. Following that, the woman in the blue blazer, the one Claire had mentioned complained about, gradually turned from 2 rows forward. Her sunglasses were now removed. She appeared to be in her mid-50s, with a tense expression, yet there was a gentleness about her. I remained silent. She spoke in a matter-of-fact tone. Elijah lifted his eyebrows. "Mom, I never said I was upset. I didn't mention your necklace." The atmosphere became quiet once more. Several passengers who had been listening seemed interested. "She simply inquired if I was all right," the woman added, and I replied that I hadn't observed anything. "Are you suggesting Claire wasn't truthful?" Someone murmured behind Elijah. The woman in the blazer remained silent. She pivoted, appearing somewhat less confident. Jonas emerged from the front of the plane. His shirt now had a slight wrinkle, as if he's been twisting his hands. He stopped near Elijah's row and bent down a little, speaking quietly. "The captain is aware," he said. "And just so you know, you're not in any trouble. We're not removing you. There's no written reprimand." "Nothing." Elijah nodded. "Thank you for letting me know." Jonas expressed regret that things hadn't unfolded differently, noting that occasionally individuals carry emotional burdens that extend beyond physical luggage. Elijah offered a subtle smile in agreement, commenting that this phenomenon is evident in various settings, not just airplanes. Jonas paused, then continued, "I'm not sure if this is inappropriate, but would you be comfortable with me attending your church sometime? I used to go when I was younger, but it's been a long time." Elijah's smile widened. "Certainly. Please do. I'll be sure to reserve a place for you." Jonas gently touched the armrest before departing. As he moved back up the aisle, a woman seated opposite Elijah bent forward. "Pastor," she murmured, "thank you." He observed her. She appeared older, possibly in her 70s. A long green scarf adorned her, and her hands rested in her lap, as if guarding something delicate. "You didn't need to speak," she said, "but you did." "Sometimes silence can feel heavier than a voice," Elijah replied. She smiled, her eyes glistening. "That is precisely it." The boy beside Elijah nudged him gently. Elijah gazed out the window. "Let's just hope I'm preaching the same on Sunday as I'm living right now," he thought. A woman with curly hair, whom he's seen before, spoke from behind. "I think the Lord already gave you your sermon, Pastor," she said. "You just preached it at 35,000 feet. Laughter rippled through the cabin, soft, sincere, and welcome. Conversations started again, moving beyond quiet murmurs. A sense of energy and relief filled the cabin, as if it had expelled something it had been containing. However, Claire was still missing. But when she ultimately returned, she would not be alone, and she would not anticipate what awaited her. Approximately 40 minutes had passed since Claire's disappearance. It was believed she would remain missing until the landing. Yet, just as the seatbelt sign illuminated once more, she reappeared, accompanied by the captain himself. Captain Raymond Stills was in his mid-40s, gray hair buzzed close, weathered skin from years in cockpits. He didn't appear angry. He didn't appear rushed. But there was something in his face, an alert stillness, like someone who had seen far worse and didn't want to make a situation worse than it already was. He stopped beside Elijah's row and crouched slightly, just as Jonas had. "Sir," he said in a low, calm voice, "my name's Ray. I understand there's been some tension on board." Elijah met his gaze directly. "Captain," I remained silent. "This cross I'm wearing appeared to cause concern for a flight attendant. She requested that I conceal it. I declined." Ray observed the necklace, then noted Elijah's composed demeanor. "I appreciate your manner," the captain said. "It's more significant than you realize these days." Claire stood rigidly behind him, her arms crossed. Those seated around appeared to be ignoring the situation, yet no one was wearing headphones. All were attentively listening. "I've spoken with my crew," Ray said, "and I've reviewed the footage. Several passengers had documented portions of the interaction, including the young man seated nearby. Elijah briefly looked at the teenager, who offered a subtle nod, still clutching his phone as if it were a barrier. Ray rose and surveyed the adjacent rows. "I want to be clear," he stated, his voice now more pronounced. "This airline has no rule against religious symbols, be it a cross, a hijab, a yarmulke, or another item. Passengers may express their beliefs provided they do so respectfully. Based on observations, Pastor Rowe has been acting in that manner, prompting nods and applause from several people." Quiet, polite, and without drama, Ray addressed Claire. "We're going to have a more in-depth conversation after we land." Claire offered no reply. Her expression remained unreadable, but her jaw was tense. She turned and walked back toward the galley without another word. Ray leaned toward Elijah. "You're not in trouble. You never were. I apologize on behalf of the crew." "You don't have to," Elijah replied, "but I appreciate it." Ray offered a small smile. "Well, some things are still worth saying." And with that, he returned to the cockpit. Jonas reappeared moments later and quietly offered Elijah a free drink and snack box. "Captain's orders," he said sheepishly. "You deserve at least that," Elijah chuckled. "I'll take the almonds." As the plane began its descent into Kansas City, a different feeling settled over the cabin. People were chatting again, not nervously but openly. Two men who hadn't spoken the whole flight were now exchanging church stories. A young woman pulled out her Bible and started highlighting verses. A toddler across the aisle waved at Elijah, and his mother mouthed, "Thank you." Elijah simply sat back and completed his sermon notes. He wrote, "Forgiveness, but not silence." The older woman in green across the aisle retrieved a pen and wrote something on a napkin, then passed it to Elijah. He unfolded it and read, "You reminded us how to carry grace." "Thank you." He folded the napkin and placed it into his notebook. The plane began its final descent, but there was a quiet sense of closure. It felt as though something had broken and then repaired itself, if only a little. Unbeknownst to Elijah, the event wasn't concluded. The world beyond that plane had already taken notice. Flight 287 landed in Kansas City just after 4:20 p.m. The tires made a soft thumping sound as they touched the runway. The standard chime occurred. Passengers unfastened their seatbelts. The overhead compartments released with a click. Yet, a peculiar stillness permeated the movement, as if no one wished to be the first to disrupt the significance of what had transpired in the air. As the plane taxied toward the gate, a flight attendant, someone other than Claire, announced over the intercom. Her voice sounded nervous, almost shaky. She expressed gratitude for everyone flying with them that day. For those continuing their journey to Albuquerque, boarding would resume shortly after a brief pause. Elijah waited patiently. He consistently prioritized allowing others to disembark first. He remained seated with his hands resting on his notebook, his cross still noticeable as the aisle emptied. When he eventually stood to collect his bag, Jonas greeted him at the plane's front. "Sir," he stated, "there are 2 airport officers just outside the jet bridge. They're not here for you. They simply want to speak briefly with the crew and take a statement." Elijah raised an eyebrow. Was someone pressing charges? "No," they replied, but once the footage started spreading, someone tagged airport security, then a few others. "I suppose people are watching." Elijah stepped off the plane and into the fluorescent-lit walkway. 2 officers stood to the side, but neither approached him. They spoke softly with a woman holding a clipboard, presumably a gate supervisor. Jonas acknowledged him with a nod and returned to the aircraft. Inside the terminal, Elijah located a quiet seat near the window. He retrieved his phone for the first time in hours, revealing 30 new messages, missed calls, and a voicemail from his assistant at the church. However, a notification at the top of the screen caught his attention. A video had gone viral. It was the recording from the teen in seat 22B, now shared on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. The caption stated, "Flight attendant attempts to embarrass pastor for wearing a cross." See his response. It had over 800,000 views and was increasing. Elijah watched only a few seconds. The video showed him seated calmly, Claire standing over him. Her voice was sharp, his reply quiet and steady. Then it shifted to his impromptu speech, the cross visible between his fingers. He turned the phone face down. He disliked attention, always had. He wasn't a person seeking headlines or clicks. A deeper feeling resonated within him. It wasn't pride, nor was it fear. It was the weight of being observed. A few minutes passed, and the teenager from 22B approached him. "Hey," the boy said, slightly winded. "I'm getting off here. My layover is in KC. I just wanted to say thanks again for not reacting negatively." Elijah smiled. "You accomplished more than I did." "You spoke the truth," the kid laughed. "No, man, you experienced it. I simply captured it on video." He extended his hand. "I'm Tyrell, by the way." "Elijah," they responded, shaking hands. The boy departed, his phone still in his hand, now with a more upright posture. Elijah reclined and rubbed his eyes. The day's burden began to weigh heavily on him. Immediately, his phone vibrated, displaying a message from his assistant. The church board viewed the video. They requested he address the matter on Sunday. Discussions about it were widespread. He rested his head against the terminal window. Outside, a plane was ascending. The engines created a powerful roar. The sun had descended just enough to illuminate the wings in gold. This was not what he had envisioned. He had come seeking tranquility and found himself amidst turmoil. Yet, perhaps storms were not always intended to be averted. For sometimes, the most profound teachings begin well before the formal setting and resonate far beyond the conclusion of a journey. Sunday morning arrived sooner than Elijah anticipated. He stood behind the pulpit at Grace Fellowship in Durham, the same location where he'd delivered sermons almost every week for the preceding 18 years. However, this time, the atmosphere felt altered. The seating was more densely filled. Unfamiliar faces occupied the pews, some from different churches, and others seemingly from nowhere. Phones were already capturing video before he began speaking. He chose not to start with scripture this time. He advanced, set his notes to the side, and surveyed the audience. "Most of you viewed the video," he started. "Some of you shared it, while others placed calls. Some expressed anger. Some inquired why I didn't shout, why I didn't call her out, why I didn't fight back." He paused, allowing the atmosphere to become still. "I've considered that as well. I've been reflecting on it consistently since." There were no microphone issues, no sounds of discomfort, just a quiet stillness. I remained composed on that plane, not from a place of fragility or fear, but because I've experienced enough to understand that the most prominent voice isn't always the most powerful. Occasionally, fortitude lies in remaining still when every instinct urges action. Occasionally, it's about declining with composure rather than anger, heads affirmed throughout the sanctuary. I didn't display that cross to instigate anyone. I wore it because it serves as a reminder of my identity. And when someone asks you to conceal the very essence that formed you, you are presented with two options: suppress your being to ease others, or remain steadfast and allow the resulting unease to reside with another. He glanced across the first row. Terrell was present beside Elijah's assistant. He offered a slight smile. The incident on that flight affected everyone. It highlighted how frequently we are instructed to be less assertive, quieter, and more accommodating. However, the reality is that one's beliefs, personal narrative, and cultural background are not liabilities. They are not something to be regretted, nor are they expendable. He touched the small wooden cross he wore and lifted it with care. "My grandmother gifted me this not for its appearance, but for its enduring significance. She told me, they'll try to take your voice. Don't hand them your silence, too." A low murmur ran through the crowd. Grief, pride, recognition. He took a deep breath. "I don't hate the woman from a plane. I'm not angry, but I hope she saw something that day that challenged her. And I hope we all remember, just because the world can't carry your truth doesn't mean you need to hide it." He stepped back. The congregation stood without prompting. It wasn't applause. It wasn't noise. A palpable sense of unity arose, as if a profound understanding transcended mere words. Following the service, Elijah emerged into the fresh spring air. Individuals approached him, extending handshakes, embraces, and cards. Some were visibly moved to tears. One woman gently placed her hand on his shoulder and quietly said, "You gave me permission to stop hiding." By that evening, the video had garnered 3.2 million views. Media organizations began contacting him, requesting interviews and soliciting editorials, but Elijah remained focused on his local community. His inbox remained full, yet his hand continued its work, visiting a family in the hospital, organizing food for the shelter, and completing the next week's sermon. The cross never left his neck, and for each story that arrived concerning someone standing up, speaking out, or simply choosing not to shrink, he'd whisper a quiet prayer. Not for praise, but for courage. The kind that doesn't roar, just the kind that remains. Because real change doesn't always begin with a protest or a headline. It begins with one person choosing to remain present. And if this story resonated with you, please don't simply move on, but share it, discuss it. And always remember to remain true to yourself, even when it's simpler to conform. Darius Whitfield arrived in a tailored suit, prepared to lead a major tech summit. However, hotel staff requested he wait outside. What followed had a significant impact on the entire company. It was just before 8 a.m. when Darius Whitfield exited his black Lincoln Continental onto the hotel's circular driveway in downtown San Jose. He adjusted the cuff of his navy blue suit jacket, the tailored fabric reflecting the morning light. He was impeccably dressed, with sharp lines, a crisp shirt, and Italian leather shoes. He exuded purpose and meticulousness, yet the valet remained still, not taking a single step. Darius held his keys casually in one hand and briefly looked over. The young man averted his gaze, feigning a check of his phone, then turned to the car behind Darius. "Hey, can you park this one?" The valet asked his coworker, gesturing past Darius without acknowledging him. Darius observed the glass doors of the hotel. They lacked prominent signage. No red carpet, just clean glass and a tranquil foyer. There was nothing to indicate what would happen within those walls. He retrieved his keys, parked his car himself, and walked across the drive. Upon opening the front door, he observed a slight change in the concierge's smile. It disappeared as quickly as it appeared. "Can I help you?" The woman at the front desk inquired without looking up. "Yes," Darius replied. "I'm here for the SummitNet conference. I believe you have a Redwood room reserved for us." The woman quickly examined his face, frowned, and then looked back at her screen. "Do you work for one of the vendors?" she asked. "No, I'm the CEO." She blinked. "Right. Could you wait outside for a moment? We're still prepping the space." He paused. "I'm also the keynote speaker." There was no apology, no moment of realization. Just a tight smile and a firm response. "Still, we're not quite ready. Please wait outside." A colleague, a young man wearing a blazer and with a walkie-talkie attached to his belt, emerged behind her. He scrutinized Darius from head to toe, as if verifying his credentials. "Are you with security?" he inquired, speaking quietly. "I am Darius Whitfield." Darius responded calmly. "The conference you're holding today? I manage it." A brief pause. The man then angled his head towards the entrance. "Please wait a moment, sir. We will find someone to escort you." Darius exhaled slowly and deliberately. Attendees began to gather. Several initial investors were among the first to arrive. A white man wearing a gray plaid suit was immediately met with handshakes and friendly expressions. He wasn't asked to wait in the lobby. Darius noticed him, but the man seemed to hardly acknowledge him and proceeded through the lobby, accompanied by the same staff who had previously requested Darius to wait outside. The hotel doors closed behind him with a quiet hiss. Darius now stood again just outside the main entrance on the pavement. He glanced at his watch. The time read 8:09. His presentation wasn't scheduled for another 51 minutes. He possessed time. However, an unsettling sensation stirred within him. It wasn't anger, it was something more profound. Across the street, a mother guided a stroller toward the coffee shop. A bus emitted a hiss as it halted at the corner. Life continued its course, and yet Darius remained stationary. A mature man who had established a company from its foundation, feeling as though he was an outsider due to his appearance not aligning with preconceived notions. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Boss, the voice of his assistant, Jalen, spoke. Just checking. Did they greet you yet? Darius stared at the hotel doors, his tone calm. Not exactly. But that's when something shifted. Not in them, but in him. Jalen was still on the line, his voice low but alert. What do you mean, not exactly? Darius replied. They asked me to wait outside. There was a pause, not shock, not disbelief, just silence. Jalen knew from his time working with Darius that his measured, toneless speech indicated more than just a report. He was analyzing and organizing the information. Wanting to come down? Jalen inquired. No, Darius replied. Stay with the investors. They'll be arriving within the next 15 minutes. Let me manage this. He ended the call, adjusted his tie, and returned through the doors. Inside, the same woman at the front desk noticed him, but her expression remained unchanged. I believed I requested you wait outside, sir, she stated, inputting information on the keyboard. And I did wait, Darius said directly. Now, I wish to speak with the event coordinator. My name is Darius Whitfield. I am the founder and CEO of Whitfield Dynamics. We reserve the Redwood Room and 2 floors of your suites for this conference. This time, she made direct eye contact with him. However, there was no apology offered, just a brief hesitation, as if she was assessing whether this was a joke. Mr. Whitmore, was it? Whitfield. A pause. She turned to the young man in the blazer. Can you call Gina from events? The man nodded and walked off. Simultaneously, a bellhop wheeled by with a luggage cart stacked with briefcases. Darius stepped aside and caught a glimpse of 2 of his board members stepping out of the elevator, each with branded SummitNet conference badges clipped to their suits. They greeted a hotel manager who seemed to have appeared suddenly to shake their hands. Darius subtly raised a hand, seeking acknowledgement. The manager briefly looked at him, paused, and then looked away. Ma'am, Darius stated calmly, refocusing on the front desk. Let me repeat this. I'm not a guest. I'm not affiliated with security. I'm not making a delivery. I'm the cause of these people being here. I orchestrated this entire summit. I brought 60 of the most influential investors in West Coast tech into this building today. The woman began to speak, but the man holding the walkie-talkie returned before she could utter a word. She's on her way, he announced. Following a brief silence, he inquired, You're really the CEO? Darius offered a subtle smile. I didn't just build this company, I financed it. I wrote the first line of code. I signed a contract with this hotel. And I chose this location because I believed in the idea of professional courtesy. Both individuals looked at him. He continued, I've got $5 billion under management. I was nearly ready to believe you could assist with that. The ensuing quiet felt unusual. It wasn't a reaction of doubt. It was awkwardness. The woman at the reception desk moved, appearing hesitant. Before she could respond, Gina from events entered the lobby quickly, carrying a folder and already speaking. Mr. Whitfield, I sincerely apologize for the delay. We weren't notified of your arrival. Please come with me. The Redwood Room is prepared, and coffee is being served. The investors are already assembling. The same staff who had requested he step outside now retreated, as if dividing water. Darius followed Gina past the desk, past the man with the walkie-talkie, and past the woman whose face was flushed now. Whether from embarrassment or an unknown reason, he remained silent. Explanation was unnecessary, because their misunderstanding wasn't a man attempting to enter a place where he wasn't welcome. What they overlooked, what they were unwilling to acknowledge, was a man who held ownership of the space. Remaining silent, allowing them the opportunity to adjust their actions, they did not. However, what followed would not be a demonstration of anger. Instead, it would serve as a lesson in remembrance, and Darius possessed a remarkable memory. The Redwood Room was located at the rear of the hotel's conference wing, beyond a hallway adorned with abstract artwork and subdued carpeting. Within, the lighting had been lowered in preparation for the initial presentation. Chairs were arranged in rows, a podium displayed the SummitNet logo, and a side table held bottled water and elegant name placards. Darius quickly surveyed the room. Jalen was positioned at the front, adjusting sound levels with the AV technician. Investors were arriving, engaging in hushed conversations over coffee. Unbeknownst to everyone, Something had occurred in the lobby. He didn't proceed to the podium. Not yet. Instead, he entered a side room, the private lounge reserved for speakers, and shut the door. He then retrieved his phone. "Tammy," he exclaimed as his head of operations answered. "We're moving the summit." There was no surprise audible on the other end. Tammy was accustomed to this manner of communication. "Today?" she inquired. "Right now," he replied. "You want to relocate 50 people with less than an hour's notice?" "Not want. Need," he corrected. She refrained from questioning further. "You want me to call the Fairmont or the Hayes?" "Hayes," he stated. "I want every investor redirected there. Make sure they understand this isn't a scheduling issue. It's a matter of principle. I will provide further details when appropriate. Please cancel the remainder of our reservation at Willow Creek Manor. Suites were included. If there's resistance to releasing the booking, please charge any associated penalties to me directly." Tammy released a slow breath. "Acknowledged. Contact Jalen as well. Instruct him to postpone the opening and redirect the guests." Subsequently, Darius concluded the call. There was no raised voices, no abrupt phone placement, only decisive action, efficient and straightforward. He observed his image reflected in the lounge's dark glass window. He felt neither justified nor triumphant. He simply felt weary. Weary of entering spaces where people perceived everything about him except his true self. A gentle knock sounded. It was Jalen. "Shall we review the slides?" Darius declined. "Plans have changed." Jalen looked surprised. "Are we departing?" "I'm already handling it." It took a moment, but then Jalen understood. They hadn't attempted to rectify the situation, had they? "No. Should I inform the board?" "I'm taking care of it directly. Please ensure the guests proceed." No one was to acknowledge the hotel on departure. Within minutes, Jalen was discreetly communicating the situation through subtle handshakes and nods. "Emergency relocation," he murmured to one group. "We've got a superior setup just a few blocks over," he informed another. "Mr. Whitfield will provide details." Simultaneously, Tammy was contacting the Hayes, securing their backup venue, arranging staff, transferring AV equipment, and lunch catering. Darius revisited the Redwood room a single time, returning to retrieve his notes and laptop. A hotel manager then emerged, his expression strained, holding a folder. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm informed there was an error at the front desk earlier today, and I want to offer a personal apology. It was never our aim to cause offense." Darius interjected smoothly. "You simply demonstrated a lack of standards. This isn't a matter of pride. It's about expectations." The manager appeared taken aback. "Is there a way we can rectify this?" Darius closed his laptop case and looked at him. "You had your chance." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The only thing louder than outrage is absence. The room, moments earlier filled with leading investors, was emptying quickly. As Darius left through the same lobby where he's been instructed to wait, he noticed the desk clerk watching him, her lips pressed tightly. The young man with the walkie-talkie had disappeared. He continued walking. A black SUV was waiting outside. The driver opened the door. Darius got in, his phone already ringing. However, this wasn't the conclusion of the day's events. It was merely the point at which others began to arrive. When the first tray of croissants reached the now half-empty Redwood room, most of the guests had already departed, assembling in the grand atrium of the Hayes, San Jose's other luxury hotel. The staff at that location required no introduction to Darius. The reception gave him a welcome as if they had anticipated this for weeks. Simultaneously, at the initial hotel, the front desk staff appeared perplexed. The receptionist repeatedly examined her screen, reviewing the guest list and then the room blocks. A puzzled expression crossed her face as she reached for the phone. "Gina," she said, "the conference guests are departing." Gina, the events coordinator, was in the loading bay assisting the AV team in packing up equipment. "What do you mean leaving?" she inquired. "I mean guests are checking out." Access was being revoked. Several individuals simply departed without comment. Within fewer than 20 minutes, the lobby, previously bustling with greetings and business cards, showed noticeable absences. Conference signs remained in place, but the atmosphere dissipated quickly. Then the manager received a phone call. "Sir, the company has terminated all reservations." He appeared stunned. "That's impossible. It's summit day." But it was, in fact, possible. The situation unfolded rapidly. Calls began pouring in. The front desk clerk appeared panicked, attempting to get the manager's attention while also handling a call from housekeeping. A guest had just departed without notification, according to reports. Another client stated they would not be paying for today's brunch. "Refer them to Mr. Whitfield," someone else added. A security guard then approached the manager. "That SUV outside?" It transported him and several others. They are no longer present. The shift felt like a chain reaction, with one problem triggering another. Without any outbursts or blame, there was simply a disappearance. At the Hays, Darius addressed the group, standing before a large projection screen in a bright conference room. He spoke deliberately and plainly, showing no indication of resentment. "Before we start, I'd like to express my gratitude for your adaptability. I understand the change of location was unforeseen, but I think the place we meet reflects what we prioritize." A quiet acknowledgement rippled through the room. "I selected that previous hotel due to its reputation, the quality of its service, and its convenient location near your offices. However, this morning, I was reminded that a refined lobby and a 5-star rating do not ensure courtesy." He paused. "I was requested to wait outside twice by staff who did not once inquire about my name. I parked my own vehicle. I reintroduced myself. I clarified my identity. Yet in that environment, none of it seemed significant. A few expressions grew strained. Heads shook. Some of you may be surprised by this. Others, perhaps not." He paused briefly. "However, I don't endorse raising voices. I don't endorse diminishing others simply to demonstrate a point. I endorse progress. And today, we are making progress to a location that acknowledges us, listens to us, and handles our business with the appropriate level of importance." The audience responded with applause, motivated by esteem, not sympathy. In the rear, Jalen observed, arms crossed, exhibiting pride. Simultaneously, at the initial hotel, the conference signage was being removed. Maintenance personnel removed untouched coffee urns. A catering team remained still, observing the scene and uncertain whether to start preparing the food. The manager examined a document he held. It was a formal notification from Whitfield Dynamics, ending their agreement, effective immediately. There would be no legal action or demands, only a straightforward severance payment and a significant financial cost. He contacted the general manager. "We're out of the event," he stated. "How?" the general manager asked. The unidentified guest was the event itself. While the hotel attempted to address what it had overlooked, Darius was poised to reveal a previously unknown aspect of his own history. The day progressed into the late afternoon. The sun cast long shadows across the street as Darius sat in the back seat of the SUV, his suit jacket folded neatly beside him. He had removed his tie, revealing the open collar of a white shirt, and a weary expression filled his eyes. Jalen sat beside him, reviewing emails on his tablet. "Are you certain you don't want me to draft a public statement?" Jalen inquired. "People are already beginning to post. Someone from Marlowe and Banks recorded a video of you exiting." Darius declined. "Let them speak. I am not trying to become popular online." He reclined against the seat. The engine emitted a low hum. Outside, children cycled along the sidewalk, their laughter echoing. A woman wearing a red jacket assisted an elderly gentleman from a rideshare and into a small dental office. It was unremarkable, simply the day proceeding as usual. A sense of heaviness filled the car. "Can I ask you something?" Jalen asked, without lifting his gaze. "Go ahead. Why didn't you just confront them?" He continued. "They deserved it, considering everything." Darius hesitated before responding, his gaze fixed on the window. Finally, he said, "When I was 19, I attended my first interview with a resume detailing summer jobs and a GPA that promised opportunity. The receptionist inquired if I was delivering food. I smiled, confirmed that I wasn't, and waited 2 hours. The interview was never scheduled. It was an oversight. I was present and observed." Jalen looked around, remaining silent. "I had the option to create a disturbance, to draw attention, but I chose not to." I departed, seeking alternative exits, finding another and then another. He moved his hands together, as though recalling the sensation of a steering wheel from years ago. For a significant portion of my life, I believe that achieving certain milestones, accumulating degrees, wealth, and professional attire, would dispel certain preconceptions. He glanced towards Jalen. Jalen nodded slowly. It wasn't simply another receptionist. It was a complete hotel, a defining moment. Exactly, Darius affirmed. That's why I left. Because I didn't need to prove anything. I didn't require them to understand. I needed the observers to witness what it appears like when you decline to plead for respect that you have already earned. He exhaled, looking out the window again. My father used to say, you can't force people to see you, but you can choose where you won't be invisible. Jalen relaxed against the seat, allowing the thought to linger. The vehicle paused at a traffic signal. Directly ahead, a billboard displayed an advertisement for a startup accelerator. It featured youthful faces, modern logos, and vibrant colors. Jalen smiled. You ever imagine we would be the ones leading those programs, rather than seeking acceptance into them? Darius chuckled. Every day, and it still feels unreal occasionally. The SUV came to a halt before the Whitfield Dynamics building, a structure of glass, steel, and understated confidence. Upon exiting, the lobby receptionist waved, already summoning the elevator. During the ascent, Jalen initiated conversation. Have you ever considered sharing that story? He asked. The 19-year-old version? Darius replied, perhaps. Not seeking sympathy, but for clarity, because people often assume these incidents are isolated events. A single bad day, a single impolite employee. However, it's rarely about a solitary moment. It's about recurring patterns, repeated, honed, and concealed. He disembarked the elevator, briefcase in his grasp. Addressing problems requires acknowledgement, but it's also possible to demonstrate how to disengage with grace. What Darius didn't understand was that his actions, his silent resistance, were quickly gaining wider attention. The consequences began subtly. They didn't appear in news reports. There was no public condemnation. Instead, there were hushed conversations in meeting rooms. Then, a few emails circulated. By midweek, 3 other companies had discreetly canceled their reservations at the same hotel. There were no official declarations. No demonstrations. We're shifting our strategy. However, the discussions were very specific. Are you aware of what occurred with the Whitfield Dynamics team? We cannot accept that level of risk associated with our reputation. Could you remind me of the alternative venue? The hotel attempted to repair the situation. A regional sales director contacted Whitfield Dynamics, proposing complimentary bookings for the upcoming quarter, complimentary executive suites, and even spa credits for visiting investors. The proposal was not approved. Tammy reviewed it, then closed and marked the email as resolved. Darius did not respond, as trust, once broken, cannot be restored with price reductions. This wasn't a matter of incorrect charges. It concerned the events permitted under supervision. Simultaneously, news of the relocation reached media outlets. A technology news source reported on the sequence of events. It was not a critical piece, but rather a recounting of the timeline, the events, the individuals who witnessed them, and the change in location. A quiet, thoughtful pause followed. However, the narrative circulated through email accounts, then in messaging apps, and ultimately during after-work gatherings where young Black professionals toasted Darius Whitfield. Not for his response, but for his restraint. Because occasionally, the most impactful action isn't a forceful reaction. It's disengaging, as if the situation wasn't worthy of your presence. The Whitfield Dynamics office was silent as Darius presided over a boardroom meeting. He sat at the head of the table, accompanied by 4 senior staff members and 3 partners from a private equity group based in Seattle. An investor spoke, commenting, "We've heard about the switch. People are still discussing it." Darius shifted back a little. "Is that a concern for you?" inquired one of the investors. "Not at all," the man replied. "It actually conveyed more about your leadership style than the slide deck ever did," another investor added. Few possess that level of composure when facing intense situations, That's the basis of trust. Darius offered a subtle acknowledgement, refraining from any display of triumph. The focus wasn't about victory, it was about adhering to fair practices from the outset. Later that evening, he walked the quiet floor of the office, pausing to observe a whiteboard covered with written diagrams, sticky notes, and equations. Jalen was present as well, drinking from a chipped mug. "Did you review the report?" he inquired. "Yes, I did." The detail about the valet's actions was omitted, Darius noted. "They always leave something out," he said. "Doesn't matter," Jalen added. "People understand the situation. Those who needed to know received the message." Darius reviewed the whiteboard. "When we constructed this establishment, I didn't desire it to be ostentatious. I didn't want visitors to feel impressed. I wanted them to feel acknowledged." "That's the key distinction," Jalen affirmed. "Do they see you now?" Darius responded softly. "They always recognized me. They simply never anticipated I would be the one authorizing the payments." He turned toward his office, extinguished the lights, and hesitated in the doorway. "Let's continue building," he stated. However, before he departed for the evening, there was one more individual Darius needed to speak with, someone who served as a reminder of the importance of moments such as this. The following morning, Darius stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, holding a newly brewed mug of black coffee. The sky appeared as a flat silver, creating a sense of quietness and distance. A gentle knock sounded at the door. "Come in," he replied without turning. The door opened. A young man entered. This was Elijah Green, in his mid-20s, intelligent but still inexperienced, a junior analyst at Whitefield Dynamics. He held a folder, seeming hesitant about the timing. "You said you wanted to meet?" Elijah inquired. Darius turned, offering a brief nod and indicating the chair opposite him. Elijah took a seat, placing the folder on his lap without opening it. His gaze shifted, suggesting uncertainty about where to start. I'm aware of what occurred at the hotel," he finally stated. "Some of us were discussing it in the lunchroom yesterday." Darius remained silent, allowing the quiet to linger, not awkwardly, but calmly. "I suppose I simply wanted to inquire. How do you manage to not be affected by it?" Elijah asked. "How do you keep your composure when it's so apparent?" Darius offered a slight smile. "Do you imagine I remain composed?" Elijah hesitated. "Didn't I?" "No, that usually played. I simply didn't reveal it." He placed his coffee down. "You know what they perceived when I entered that hotel. A man present in a location they didn't anticipate. Nothing else held significance. Not the professional obligations, not the agreements, not the convention. Only their own conception of what authority embodies and who doesn't align with it." Elijah moved closer. "Then why not challenge them? Why not expose them publicly?" "Because the world is already aware," Darius explained. "That's not the core issue. The true challenge lies in demonstrating to future generations that you don't require their validation to take action. You don't need their authorization to feel like you belong," Elijah affirmed thoughtfully. "You navigated the situation with composure," he commented. "If it had been me, I'm unsure," Darius continued. "That's the key point. You don't need certainty. You simply need to retain this understanding. Don't sacrifice your dignity because of another person's lack of understanding. If they misunderstand you, allow it. However, ensure the foundation you're establishing for yourself, your company, your name, and your team creates a sense of inclusivity for everyone." Elijah paused, the sentiment resonating more deeply than anticipated. "That's the essence of leadership," Darius stated. "It's not about reacting aggressively. It's about creating opportunities elsewhere." A brief silence followed. Then Darius moved closer. "Now what's in here?" he asked, gesturing to the folder Elijah had brought. "Oh, right," Elijah responded, seeming to refocus. "It's a new proposal from the behavioral data team. We're incorporating changes based on your feedback from last week." Darius opened the folder and quickly reviewed the first page. "Excellent. Let's schedule a meeting with the team this afternoon." Elijah started to leave, pausing at the doorway. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" Darius replied, "For showing us how to progress." He acknowledged Elijah with a subtle nod. Elijah departed the room. Outside, traffic flowed consistently, as if the world remained oblivious to what had transpired. However, those who had observed would not easily forget. This extended beyond a single man and one hotel. It encompassed all the rooms people enter where someone perceives only a partial truth. It was about the subtle ways authority can exert itself, through initiative, not response. And it concerned altering the established order without accepting the tools offered. If this narrative resonated with you deeply, if it prompted reflection on how you navigate environments not designed for you, please discuss it. Share your thoughts. And remember to subscribe to receive more true stories demonstrating the remarkable power of quiet strength. In a park, she performed a life-saving act for someone she didn't know. 3 hours passed, and then 5 high-end automobiles arrived at her residence. The subsequent events rendered her utterly stunned. 20 years. That was the duration of Denise Lattimore's service to that hospital. She wasn't simply a nurse, she was the nurse. The one they consulted when situations became critical. The one who eagerly accepted the less desirable shifts. Holidays, weekends, overnight assignments. Denise was consistently present. And then, abruptly, she ceased her service. The electronic message arrived at 6:42 a.m. While she was sipping her first cup of coffee, her shift wasn't supposed to start until 7:30. There was no meeting, no call. Just a subject line that read position status update. She clicked it and read, "We regret to inform you that due to internal restructuring, your position has been terminated effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be deposited by the end of the week. We thank you for your years of service." That was it. No signature, no explanation. Denise watched the screen, anticipating additional information. A follow-up, a phone number. Anything, nothing. She blinked, shut the laptop, and remained still. Her daughter, Mecca, was still asleep upstairs. The last thing Denise desired was for her to awaken and observe her mother falling apart before 7 a.m. Denise placed the coffee mug in the sink and stood for a full minute with her hands braced on the counter. She didn't cry. Not yet. She grabbed her keys, slipped on her running shoes, and left a note on the table. Went for a walk. "Be back soon. Love you." She didn't even bother to change out of her scrubs. She walked out the door and headed for Avondale Park, one of the oldest in Birmingham. It was quiet this time of morning. Just a few regulars walking their dogs, a jogger here and there. Denise wasn't sure what she was doing. She hadn't planned this walk. She hadn't planned anything. A weight settled in her chest, a feeling she needed to process. The phrases from the email echoed in her mind. "We regret to inform you." She considered it harsh, not just the dismissal, but the moment it occurred. Her daughter had recently begun her studies at Miles College. Tuition payments were approaching, and Denise had been striving to manage every dollar to cover expenses. There had been no prior notice, no meeting, no warning, simply a formal, impersonal message. She walked until her calves ached. She located a bench overlooking the small lake and sat down. Her phone vibrated. It was Mecca. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" It read, "Didn't hear you leave." Denise looked at the message. She began to type a reply. Deleted it. Typed another. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just needed air. Love you." She set the phone down and leaned back against the bench. The sky was a gentle, early blue, the kind of color that could make you momentarily forget how difficult life can be. "I gave them everything," she murmured, not realizing she had spoken aloud. To anyone else observing, she appeared like just another woman taking a morning walk. But internally, Denise was falling apart, not solely due to the job loss, but from the silence that followed. No one from the hospital contacted her. No one sent a message. 20 years, and not a single farewell. She rubbed her eyes. She wouldn't cry in a park, but something within her altered right then. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Perhaps it was grief. Perhaps it was anger disguised in a gentler form. For the first time in a long time, Denise felt still. Not okay, just still. Then she heard it. A sound. Quick, sharp, like someone hitting the pavement hard. She turned her head. A man had fallen near the trail, just beyond the row of hedges. He was maybe in his late 50s, face down on the ground, motionless. People looked, but no one moved. But Denise did. Denise didn't hesitate. Her body kicked into gear before her mind even caught up. She rose quickly, running towards the man prone on the asphalt. As she approached, the heat of the pavement was noticeable, along with the odor of sweat and a metallic tang. She wasn't sure if it was blood or fear. He remained still. "Sir?" she asked, kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" There was no response. Several individuals had paused at a safe distance. No one advanced. She carefully turned him over, observing his chest for signs of life, his neck for a pulse. His complexion was ashen. A bluish tint was appearing on his lips. Denise placed her fingers on the side of his neck. She felt nothing. "Call 911, she shouted without looking up. Someone mumbled, "Already did," but it seemed unimportant. She began counting seconds. She tilted his head back, checking his airway. Then she leaned in, delivered 2 quick breaths, and started compressions. 1, 2, 3. Her hands moved as if she's done this many times before. But this wasn't a training dummy. This was real. This was a matter of life or death. An audience observed, whispering and recording with their phones. However, their presence was insignificant. It was solely about her and him, and the sound of her hands striking his chest. "Come on," she murmured. "Don't you dare give up." He appeared to be in his mid-50s, dressed in a fitted black workout set, with a wedding ring and an Apple Watch. He seemed like the type of man who should be too healthy to collapse in public. But hearts are not governed by appearances. 1 minute passed, then 2. Denise felt sweat soaking through her scrubs, her hair plastered to her forehead. Her arms were sore, and her back throbbed. She continued working, focusing on her breathing. She compressed and counted. The silence was intense, a silence that felt like it was holding its breath. Then he gasped. The breath was weak and strained, but it was a breath. Denise moved closer. "Hey, are you with me?" His eyelids flickered. His chest moved a slight movement. Paramedics arrived less than a minute later. 2 of them rushed from the ambulance, carrying equipment. "I got him breathing," Denise said swiftly, stepping aside to allow them to take over. "No pulse when I arrived." I immediately began compressions. One of the medics acknowledged her. "Are you a nurse?" She replied I was. He didn't have time to inquire further. They proceeded with urgency. Oxygen mask, defibrillator pads, and vital signs assessment. Denise retreated, allowing the trained professionals to take charge. Her hands trembled. Someone behind her commented, "You saved him." She turned to see a woman, mid-30s, a jogger, visibly anxious. "You were incredible," the woman added. I didn't know what to do." Denise nodded once, then turned her eyes back to the man on the ground. She didn't need thanks. She just needed him to live. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, one of the paramedics looked at her and said, "You bought him time. That man's lucky you were here." Denise gave a tired half-smile. "I guess we both are," she said, watching as the ambulance pulled away. Sirens off. That was usually a good sign. The crowd began to thin, individuals returning to their daily lives as if nothing had occurred, as though they hadn't just witnessed a stranger die in return before their very eyes. Denise remained still for a brief moment, her heart racing. She then proceeded back towards the bench where it all began, sat down once more, and picked up her phone. Mecca had sent another message. "Mom, are you okay? Would you like me to bring breakfast?" Denise gazed at the message, her thumbs pausing above the screen. She then typed, "I'll be home soon." An event occurred. "I'll explain when I return," she texted. She didn't know the man's name, didn't know if he'd survived the day. Her actions weren't for praise. It was a reaction. It was inherent. It was her purpose. Although her professional role had shifted, her identity remained unchanged. But the world had a peculiar habit of returning when you least anticipated it. Denise didn't realize how quickly that return would happen. 3 hours later, Denise was back home. Mud clung to her shoes, a souvenir from the park, and she was still wearing her scrubs. Mecca had prepared eggs and toast, placing them on the stove before heading to her shift at the daycare. The house was silent, punctuated only by the ticking of the wall clock, which consistently ran 5 minutes fast. Denise settled onto the front porch, cradling a chipped mug of green tea. She held it with both hands, attempting to find comfort in its warmth rather than dwell on the persistent tension beneath her ribs. Her thoughts were jumbled, with fragments of the incident in the park and recollections of the chilling email. She couldn't erase the image of his face, the initial stillness of his chest. She remembered the moment she felt a return of life under her hands. She had witnessed people flatline previously, but this felt deeply personal. She took a deliberate sip, then she registered the sound. Engines, several of them. She raised her head from her mug and blinked. 5 luxury vehicles approached her street, following one another. These weren't simply elegant cars. They were the type usually seen in magazines or on social media influencers' profiles. Among them was a Lucid Air, a Mercedes Maybach, a matte black Escalade reflecting the afternoon light, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, and trailing behind, a sleek Aston Martin that emitted a distinct, almost living sound. The vehicles decelerated and halted directly in front of her house. A peculiar sensation arose within her, not fear precisely, but a more profound feeling, a quiet prompting. This concerns the events that followed. The entrance of the Lucid opened. A man emerged, tall, wearing a sharp suit, untied, charcoal gray with a black shirt beneath. He was clean-shaven, silver highlighting his temples, his face bearing a tranquil expression as if possessing an eternity. It required a moment for recognition, but when he spoke, her breath halted. "Ms. Lattimore," she rose deliberately. He advanced, his walk fluid and assured, yet unpretentious. "I believe you saved my life earlier today," he stated. At the park, Denise peered, trying to recognize him. Appearing calm, without any signs of distress, with his complexion restored and his eyes bright, he seemed almost transformed. But it was indeed him. You collapsed," she observed. "I did," he confirmed with a slight nod. "And I understand I wouldn't have recovered if it weren't for your assistance," she commented, setting down her mug. "How did you locate me?" He responded with a gentle, almost regretful smile. "A person with my resources usually has people managing specifics, but let's just say I was highly driven." She felt her throat tighten. "I didn't do it for any reason." "I know," he said swiftly. "That's precisely why I'm here." A younger woman, likely in her mid-30s, emerged from behind him, stepping out of the Escalade with a thick envelope and a small tablet. She remained silent, simply waiting. "My name's Roland Greaves," the man stated. "I have several companies, primarily in logistics and software. It's not a flashy business, but I've achieved success. Earlier today, I was approximately 30 seconds from not experiencing another sunrise." Denise adjusted her posture, her jaw moving. She wasn't certain of the direction this conversation would take, but it felt significant. "I want to speak with you," Roland stated. "Just 5 minutes. I'm not here to offer you a product or create a disturbance, but I have a debt I'm unsure how to resolve." She hesitated, remaining uncertain. She then said softly, "You're welcome to sit if you wish." He nodded once. "Thank you." They proceeded together to the porch. She observed the cars passing by. No one else emerged from the vehicles. As he settled into a chair, Roland surveyed the surroundings. "Pleasant place. It has a lived-in feel." "That's right," she replied. "Mecca's room is the one with the damaged blind." She explained that she had broken it while trying to chase away a wasp. He smiled. "Sounds like a spirited individual." "Is she?" A brief pause occurred. He then turned to her. "May I ask you a personal question?" She nodded. "Why didn't you wait for another person to assist?" Denise inhaled deeply. "Because if it were me, I would have hoped someone wouldn't wait." He observed his gaze downwards. He nodded slowly. Then, he looked in her eyes once more. I needed to hear that, but Roland hadn't come solely to thank her. He'd come with a proposition, one that would assess the extent of her trust in the kindness of strangers. Denise leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed over her chest. "So," she said, maintaining a level tone, "what precisely is this concerning?" Roland moved closer, his elbows gently on his knees. "You gave me 12 minutes of your time, and in those 12 minutes you didn't pause. You didn't inquire who I was or what I might provide. You simply defended me." Denise remained silent. She wasn't swayed by words. She's heard numerous eloquent presentations at hospital fundraisers and board meetings. This felt distinct, but she still didn't understand his direction. I established a company from nothing, he stated. It began in a garage in Baton Rouge. My first product was shipped from a rented storage unit. I navigated through losses, lawsuits, and everything in between. Now I have 500 employees and the ability to set my own guidelines. He paused. But despite all of that, I've never encountered someone helping me without expecting something in return. Not since my mother. That sort of generosity. It alters your viewpoint. Denise observed him intently. So, what exactly are you proposing, Mr. Greaves? I'm not seeking assistance. He raised a hand. Nor am I. I'm not attempting to provide a rescue. I'm aiming to make an investment. She frowned slightly. I researched your background, he continued. After my assistant located the incident report, I requested your employment history. Hope you aren't upset. Denise gave a humorless laugh. I'm accustomed to people investigating my affairs. This week has been filled with new experiences. Roland smiled. You were the most sought-after nurse in your department. There were notes from patients in the files about you. One woman mentioned that you were the reason she was able to get out of bed following her surgery. She also threw a shoe at me when I instructed her to perform her breathing exercises. He laughed. Nevertheless, she recalled you fondly. Then he retrieved something from his pocket. It was small, square, and black. He sat on the arm of her chair. A key fob. What is that? She inquired, looking at it but not touching it. It's for one of the cars parked outside, he said. The Lucid. Brand new. It's yours if you'd like it. Denise paused, studying it. Are you serious? She asked. As a second heart attack. He replied, only partially teasing. She didn't take the key. Why me? She questioned. I don't know many people like you, he stated plainly, and I've been thinking lately. I want to surround myself with people who move toward the problem, not away from it. People who act without needing a reason. He looked at her, his expression gentling. So I'd like to offer you a job. Denise blinked. He continued, I'm launching a new initiative. A wellness foundation linked to our company, focused on underserved communities, free clinics, training programs, and mental health outreach. Needs assistance. Funding is available, but we lack the personnel to establish it. We require someone with your expertise to help build it. Someone who understands the system's complexities and knows what individuals truly need. He paused. You would be director of clinical programs, responsible for setting the strategic direction and building your own team. The compensation is excellent, with full benefits. And you would have the autonomy to shape the foundation. She stared at him, speechless. Alternatively, he suggested softly, you're allowed to decline. I will still provide the vehicle. I will still express my gratitude. However, if you accept, I believe we have the potential to create something substantial. A pause settled between them, but it lacked tension. At length, Denise inquired, what would motivate you to entrust such a significant duty to someone you have only just met? Roland remained composed, stating, because occasionally, the instance in which someone rescues your life reveals that they are the individual you were meant to have known from the beginning. Denise found herself at a loss for words. She glanced at the key fob once more. Then, she looked at him. You'll give me time to think, take as long as you want. Just know this. I didn't come here to reward you. I came because I think the world needs more people like you making decisions that matter. But as soon as Roland left, Denise's heart remained unsettled. If anything, it pounded faster, because accepting meant stepping into something she wasn't sure she could manage, and that scared her more than losing a job ever did. That night, Denise remained restless. She sat on the bed's edge in the dimness, the faint light from the hallway offering little illumination. Her fingers followed the contours of the advanced key fob still on her nightstand, and used since Roland departed. It seemed overly substantial, overly swift, too remarkable to be genuine. She had experienced disappointment previously, not solely connected to the hospital. Years earlier, Mecca's father had pledged them security, only to disappear as debts accumulated. Denise understood from a young age to be wary of smiles, even those that appeared gentle. However, this opportunity felt different. It wasn't charity, it was a chance, one she hadn't anticipated. Needing a moment to herself, She put on a hoodie, placed the key fob in her pocket, and went outside. The Lucid remained, parked silently beneath the streetlight, its design distinct, its paint rich and flawless like midnight. She opened the driver's side door, anticipating an alarm. There was none. The vehicle greeted her as if familiar with her. Within, the cabin remained still and quiet, the dashboard illuminated with a gentle hum. She refrained from starting the engine. Instead, she simply sat, her palms resting on the steering wheel, inhaling a scent reminiscent of fresh leather and potential. She didn't register Mecca until the passenger door opened. "Okay, Mom," her daughter stated, entering the car. "Who did you rescue? And what sort of James Bond operation were you involved in?" Denise looked up, surprised. "What are you doing awake? The porch light was on, and you weren't in your room." "That's code for Mom is spiraling." Mecca glanced around. "This car is insane," by the way, Denise sighed. "It was the man in the park. He found me." Mecca turned sharply. "What? How?" He's not just some guy. His name's Roland Greaves, owns like 3 companies. He offered me a job." Mecca's eyes widened. "Doing what?" "Building something. A clinic. A program. He wants me to run it, wait. He once met you, almost lost his life, and now wants you to lead his company's health division?" That's the summary. Mecca reclined in the seat. "And you're presently in the car he provided. Because you haven't decided yet. I don't want to accept something I didn't earn." "Mom," Mecca said, looking at her, "you save his life. You deserve the air in this car." Denise remained quiet. "Look," Mecca continued, "I understand. You're apprehensive. This feels like an opportunity that's almost unbelievable. You always said, fear doesn't get to run the show. You told me that the night before my first recital. That was different." "No, it wasn't." Mecca's voice softened. "This might be the first time in your life someone sees your worth openly. Not after 10 years. Not when they're desperate. But right now. And you're hesitating because you're used to fighting for scraps." Denise turned to look at her. "You think I should take it?" "I think. Do not allow fear to guide your decision." They remained silent for a while longer. The following morning, Denise drove the Lucid. She drove slowly, not far, just a few miles down to a nearby diner, where she and Mecca used to eat breakfast when Mecca was little. She needed a place to think without feeling confined. While she drank her coffee, an older man in a corduroy jacket sitting at the counter gave her a polite nod. "Beautiful car outside," he said. Denise turned, feeling a little unsteady, still adjusting. "Can't complain about good fortune," he remarked, moving his cup. "You simply need to ensure you utilize it wisely." But Denise understood that blessings invariably carried a cost, and the subsequent action would necessitate her abandoning everything she believed about herself, to evolve into someone else. Assuming she possessed the bravery, Denise remained in her kitchen, her arms crossed, observing the document Roland's assistant had provided. It detailed the job description and compensation package. The title, Director of Clinical Programs, still felt unfamiliar, like something that belonged to someone else. The numbers on the salary line alone made her chest tighten. She'd always been modest, made her way on steady, honest work. Never dreamed of 6 figures, certainly not with benefits and a personal driver listed in the perks. It felt unreal, uncomfortable even, but not because it wasn't real, because part of her believed she didn't deserve it. Denise answered the phone, not to contact Roland, but to reach out to someone else, a name she hadn't spoken in years. "Hi, is this Bernardine Willis?" A moment of silence. Then a recognizable voice responded, "Yes, who is calling?" It was Denise. Denise Lattimore. They had worked together at Jefferson Medical when they were both assigned to the night shift. Another pause, then a surprised laugh. "Girl, are you kidding me?" "Denise? From 2A? I thought you disappeared. I was let go this week." The line was silent for a moment. "And you?" "You were excellent." "That's what I believed as well." Denise outlined the situation concisely. The collapse. The man. The offer. Bernardine expressed quiet disbelief. "And you're contacting me because?" "Because I harbor doubts. And because I fear I might not be adequate." Bernardine responded immediately. "Denise, the hospital never appreciated your value. We all recognize that. You mentored half those new employees while they rewarded positions to individuals who couldn't recall the crash cart protocols." Denise laughed once. "I recall. When someone recognizes your value and offers you the opportunity to influence things, embrace it. Denise felt a warmth behind her eyes. And what if it fails? She inquired. Then you'll leave with your head held high, as you always have. But don't decline because you believe you'll be out of place. You're not. More than most. That night, Denise didn't pace the floor. She didn't overthink. She retrieved the contract, reviewed it completely, and then signed. The following morning, Roland contacted her. I allowed you a few days, he stated. You weren't required to have them, Denise responded. My decision is made. A pause followed on his end, then a drawn-out breath. Are you certain? I am certain. She continued. However, I require one thing from you. Anything. She clarified. I don't want to be a token hire. I don't want you to showcase me as your feel-good project. If I am joining, I'm coming to work. I will build the team. I will call the shots. Roland's voice became serious. That's precisely why I wanted you, he said. And with a chuckle, he added, I'm not addressing you as sir. Deal, he concluded. A meeting was scheduled for Monday. He would have his legal team finalize onboarding procedures. She would visit the campus they were assessing in Tuscaloosa, the location for the first community clinic. After she ended the call, Denise paused in the kitchen, her bare feet on the tile floor, as sunlight streamed through the blinds. She had just made what felt like the biggest decision of her life. It wasn't born of necessity, but of deliberate choice. Mecca appeared at the head of the stairs, still in pajamas, rubbing her eyes. You're up early, she observed. I have work to do. Her daughter addressed her. Did you take it? Mecca replied, I did. Mecca smiled. I'm proud of you, Mom, she said. I'm proud of me too. However, Denise understood that this wasn't the conclusion. It marked the start of a life she never imagined achieving, and she was now entering it, not as someone pleading for a place, but as someone asserting her right to it. When Denise first passed through the double glass doors of the building in Tuscaloosa, the feeling wasn't one of intrusion. It felt like returning to a familiar place. The building wasn't elaborate, not yet. The flooring was concrete, the walls unadorned, and wires still protruded from the ceiling, but she envisioned it clearly. She saw the intake desk positioned to the right, a children's play area directly opposite, consultation rooms extending along the rear hallway, a location where care would not be a luxury. It would be commonplace. Roland entered, carrying rolled-up blueprints beneath one arm and a coffee in the other. He gave it to her silently. She smiled and accepted it. Day one, he stated. More like step one, she responded. During the subsequent weeks, Denise began her work. She sought out not only former colleagues, but also individuals who had been overlooked, underutilized, and undervalued. This included nurses, aides, translators, and even a former janitor who desired to learn administrative tasks. Denise possessed the ability to nurture potential, training those with the willingness to learn. Her focus wasn't constructing a clinic, it was cultivating a culture. Each morning, she drove the same car, a gift from Lucid Greaves, not to display it, but to recall the origins of her work. It was a reminder of that pivotal moment in the park, hands placed on a stranger's chest, desperately hoping to detect a heartbeat. After 6 months, the clinic quietly opened its doors, without fanfare or publicity, simply relying on patience. A woman accompanied by her 2 children, who had not received medical care in 3 years. A man with uncontrolled diabetes, a teenager seeking assistance with anxiety. Denise welcomed each individual as if they were old friends. There were no barriers of paperwork or procedure, just compassionate care. One afternoon, while she was revising intake protocols at her desk, her receptionist softly knocked on the open door and announced, "There's someone here requesting to see you." Without a name given, Denise entered the lobby and paused, visibly surprised. He was the man from the park. Roland had visited, sure, but this wasn't him. This was the man she'd knelt beside, whose chest she compressed until life returned. Dressed in a simple navy sweater and jeans, with a quiet smile that conveyed something deeper than words. "I never thanked you properly," he said. "You did more than enough." He walked over slowly, pulled something from his pocket. A small, flat velvet box. Denise shook her head. "If that's jewelry, I swear I'll toss it right back." He laughed. No, it's not jewelry. She opened the box. Inside was a bronze medallion, etched with an emblem she didn't recognize. It's from my mother's side, he said. Passed down 3 generations. My grandmother gave it to my mom when she became the first black woman in her district to run a public health clinic. Denise's fingers closed gently around it. I think she'd have wanted you to have it. She swallowed hard. I'm not family. You're exactly what family looks like, he said softly. At least the kind that saves lives. Later that night, Denise sat on her porch again. Not with tea, with silence. The good kind. The kind that lets you breathe. The street was quiet. No more engines. No more questions. Just peace. Mecca stepped out, leaned on the railing beside her. Long day? She asked. Best kind, Denise said. They sat together, watching the sky turn purple over the rooftops. After a long pause, Mecca said, it's funny. What is? How you save a life, and somehow it ended up saving yours too. Denise didn't reply. She didn't need to, because she understood now. Some moments fundamentally alter everything. Not because they're dramatic or widely known, but because they reveal your true character when you are alone. And when you act from love, without any expectation of reward, sometimes life responds in an unexpected way. Should you find yourself in a situation where your efforts feel unseen and your work goes unrecognized, please recall this. Gratitude may not always be expressed openly, but it remains. And when it does reappear, it can be more significant than you could have foreseen. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who could benefit from hearing it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We have more stories similar to this that demonstrate the profound impact of a single positive decision.